Thank you. You see up here, we have a little sign-in sheet. So we would really appreciate anybody who's here could put your name and phone and address. Yeah, we'll pass it up and down the rows. We are so honored to have Ruben here with us, also to have all of you here with us, because this is the very first event like this that we're having in our new place. So it's gran honor tener todos ustedes, a tener a Ruben, especialmente y ya a tener cada uno de ustedes aquí. Es primer evento especial que tenemos aquí en nuestro nuevo lugar. I hope that everyone will take the time to look at this New World Border Art Show. This is traveling art show. As I say, Ruben has seen this before. That's because he's traveling. So, you know, it's un show que está viajando por todo ese país por educar a la gente en algo en que está pasando en la frontera. So, this is just to help them open our eyes a little bit into what is happening, and I'm sure Ruben will open our eyes more. So that we are so thrilled to have all of you here. I would like to introduce, where is Miriam? Miriam composed just a little song, very brief song, as a little welcome, and then I'm going to pass to you. Es Miriam Mijangos de Guatemala.
¡Bravo!
Pues a todos, especialmente ¿verdad? Al señor Ruben Garcia, y pues espero que sea de su agrado una pequeña canción, ¿verdad? Que pues, le hicimos ahí. Hoy 9 de septiembre de fiesta estaremos por las bendiciones que vienen del cielo. Los ángeles vuelan para dar ayuda a los emigrantes que están en la lucha. Gracias a mi Padre que está en el cielo y a Ruben Garcia que sea bienvenido. Que Dios le bendiga por esos esfuerzos y por esa lucha que aún él percibe. Que Dios camina fronteras, no teme a nadie, ayuda a su hermano sin esperar nada. Conoce tu instinto, conoce tu instinto, conoce tu instinto con una mirada. Tenemos un ángel y tenemos dos, a Rita Dentino que está en Casa Freehold, tendiendo su mano a la humanidad. Gracias a mi Padre, porque están aquí. Bendigo el camino por donde ellos pasan, no tienen fronteras para sus hermanos, no hay egoísmo, tampoco maldad. Sirven a su hermano con humanidad. Sirven a su hermano con humanidad.
Sí, por favor, sí, por favor.
Yes, try to. So today, the 9th of September, I will not even go
You
there.
have to sing.
that the angels are flying to help us, the immigrants here in the struggle. Thank you to God, who is in heaven, and to Ruben Garcia. Welcome. Let's see. On the moment translation, can probably be better than me. That God should bless everyone in your struggles, and in this struggle that we need to continue. We walk along the border, and that we not be afraid. Help our brother. Without having expectation of something in return. Trust our instinct. Know our instinct, know our instinct, know our instinct, and listen to that instinct. We have an angel. We have 2 angels. Read it anything else. We in Casa Freehold had our hand and humanity. Thank you, God, for that she's here. We are in the path, and you go along with us. There are no boundaries. There are no frontiers. We are all brothers and sisters. There should not be no egoismo. We know what that means, yes? Nor any bad feeling. Stay with your sister and with your brother for all humanity. Before that, Ruben, if you can, I would like to give you an honorary T-shirt of Casa Freehold.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias.
Me gustaría dar una playera de Casa Freehold como miembro de honor de Casa Freehold. Ese también, tal vez le gustaría. Ese, empezando aquí, escribió las reglas de la vida. Están hechos de nuestros trabajadores.
Ah, qué bien.
Y es la lista de ellos que cada día llegando y yo trato de estar a su lado poniendo en la lista. Y el principio es respeto, un hermano al otro. Y ya si pasa 15 por trabajar, el próximo día empezamos con 16 y pasamos día por día por día. 7 días a la semana, pues nosotros no teníamos ni fines de semana. So I give to Ruben the rules of work that are made by the workers themselves. And they can be revised by the workers themselves to make them better. And also the list, and the list is every day. They can put themselves on the list. They can work, say, number 1 to 13, and the next day they will start with number 16. You know, they have made this system. Maybe if we share with anybody, and I really welcome these people from other places that are struggling with us. You know, we welcome Cata, we welcome Casa Esperanza, and we welcome Karina, who's been working hard for some years in the visitation. And we have, right now we have the opportunity to have, here in Freehold, we have about always at least 300 people in detention, right here, about maybe. We can walk there in 5 minutes to the jail. So, and we know in the rest of New Jersey, we have, you know, other couple thousand people at least. How many would you estimate, Nelson?
Many, I say many.
Yeah, at least 2,000 or 3,000 in New Jersey. We have the opportunity this fall to have some people, you know, work with us, some as volunteers, some as paid interns in this visitation program. And Karina and I and others are going to work together to make this a strong visitation program. So this is the information, and it'll be right here, you know.
Can we pass it around? Is anyone?
Podemos pasar, sí, está. So es, you know, como en cualquier momento hay al menos 300 gente aquí en este cárcel de Freehold, solamente detenidos, no por hacer ningún delito, nada más ser inmigrantes sin papeles. Y ya otros que están más al norte, aquí en esta sala hay mucho, yo puedo ver muchos afectados que han pasado por esa experiencia o tienen su familia en esa situación. Yo no quiero decir levantar las manos, pero yo puedo. Yo sé que hay bastantes manos que ya van a levantarse, yo digo, a los afectados. Y la verdad, todos somos los afectados, porque está haciendo el mundo un lugar peor por tener tantos en tensión en cárcel. So, you know, we have sitting right here in this room, you know, we have people being in detention who are going through this process of fighting, or else they have a family member in detention, and this is a big part of our struggle day after day after day. So please join us in this visitation program. It's very important. Especially here, we have the people from upstate New York. And we see the people traveling all the way from upstate New York. They get here, they're a little late. They don't let them go in to see the person. So I think we ask if you could please turn off cell phones. Y ahorita podemos apagar teléfonos por un respeto a todos. Gracias. So you can, okay, and I'm going to turn over to Ruben. Ruben is a professor of sociology at Georgian Ford University. Ella es profesora de sociología en la Universidad Georgian Ford en México. Y también es luchadora.
Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon to everybody. Me da un placer estar aquí con ustedes otra vez. Pero primeramente yo quiero darle una bienvenida al señor Ruben Garcia. Bienvenido a Freehold, a nuestra comunidad en Casa Freehold. But first of all, I would like to welcome Ruben Garcia to Lakewood, to our community in Casa Freehold. Para los que no conocen al señor Garcia, yo quiero dar una introducción breve. For those of you who don't know Ruben Garcia, I would like to give you a very short introduction. El señor Garcia es uno de los fundadores y el actual director de la Casa Annunciation en El Paso, Texas, donde ha dedicado su vida a darles hospedaje a numerosos inmigrantes, a los pobres, a los marginados en nuestra comunidad. He is one of the founders and the director of Annunciation House in El Paso, Texas, where for many years he and his community have provided hospitality to thousands of immigrants, the poor, and the marginalized of our society. Pax Christi de Estados Unidos, el Movimiento Católico Nacional de Paz, ha reconocido la vida y el testimonio de Ruben Garcia nombrándolo como el ganador del premio Maestro de Paz por este año 2012. Pax Christi USA, which is the National Catholic Peace Movement, in recognition of his work, of the testimony that his life presents, has named him the recipient of the award, Teacher of Peace, for this year. Agradecemos su visita. Somos los miembros de Casa Freehold y estamos con usted y con el trabajo que usted brinda a los más necesitados. That we are in this struggle together. We are with you. Reciba usted, por favor, nuestra calurosa bienvenida. Please accept our very warm.
Thank you very much, Ruben. I appreciate very much. It's a delight to be here with you.
Muchas gracias. Agradezco.
I feel very much at home here with you. This is my kind of community. This is my kind of home. This is my kind of place. Les agradezco muchísimo la bienvenida que me han extendido. Yo les digo a ustedes que yo me siento muy en casa aquí con ustedes. Este es el tipo de comunidad donde yo me encuentro en casa, es el tipo de gente luchadora, inmigrante, con quien yo vivo y pues me siento muy feliz por estar aquí con ustedes y poder compartir un tiempecito con ustedes. Yo quiero empezar explicándoles un poquito del trabajo que yo hago para que tengan una idea, que tengan un contexto del cual entender de lo que yo voy a hablar esta tarde. La Casa de Anunciación lleva para 35 años, entonces que tenemos muchos años haciendo este trabajo. Estamos en la mera frontera con los Estados Unidos y México, Ciudad Juárez en el lado de México, El Paso en el lado de los Estados Unidos. Y el trabajo de nosotros, el enfoque principal ha sido un enfoque de hospitalidad, darle la bienvenida al inmigrante, muchos de ellos indocumentados. Así es que una de las cosas que yo considero un don para mí es de que he tenido yo la oportunidad de ser testigo del fenómeno de la inmigración a través de muchos años y poder ver la evolución de esa migración y también ser testigo de cómo es que nuestro país ha cambiado a través de ese tiempo. Mucha gente conoce el tema de migración ahora estos últimos días y piensa que eso es la realidad que se ha vivido siempre, cuando la verdad es que en tiempos atrás ha sido una realidad muy distinta. I'd like to start by giving you some sense of the context within which I live and work, so as to help you understand, what I have to say, that it comes out of that context. Annunciation House is now about to complete 35 years. Through that period of time, we've been able to welcome, to see through our houses, in excess of 125,000 people have passed through our houses. I say to people that I consider myself especially gifted in having had the opportunity to witness the evolution of immigration as you see people coming through. You hear the experience of Ellis Island, you hear the experience of the California coast, and very few people have stopped to consider the role that the state of Texas, cities like El Paso have played in the immigration phenomenon as more than 125,000 people have passed through our house, have stayed with us. We've had over 125,000 guests. Obviously, only a small number of those who have crossed through our border passed through our house. So there have been hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people that have passed through that corridor. El Paso, its name, the pass to the north. You know, we trace our roots in El Paso back almost 400 years. The mission churches there go back. I dare say none of you know this. None of you know this. That the first Thanksgiving did not take place on Plymouth Rock. Okay? It did not. In fact, the European arrived in a little town right outside El Paso that is known as San Elizario before it arrived in Plymouth Rock. And as is true of what happened in Plymouth Rock, when the Spaniard crossed into San Elizario and they entered the New World, one of the first things they did was gather and give thanks. You're going to see that in your history books because it's very important for us to maintain the myth that the first Europeans were all white. You know, they weren't brown. You know, they were white. And the truth is, they weren't. They were Spaniards. You know, and it happened right there along the border. After many years, maybe 30 years ago, there's a group that started recreating that first Thanksgiving. You know, much to the chagrin of people up in Plymouth Rock, you know, who want to get Congress to pass a law that will change history and make it official that it was the first Thanksgiving of Plymouth Rock. I just think that it's important for us to have a sense of the history of migration, and so I consider myself extremely fortunate and blessed to have been doing this for so long. Les estaba explicando que parte del fenómeno de la migración y de la oportunidad de poder haber sido testigo de este fenómeno incluye la verdad, la realización que nosotros, ustedes saben que ahora en noviembre, que se acerca noviembre, celebramos en los Estados Unidos el Día de Gracia. ¿Y qué es lo que nos dicen del Día de Gracia? Que ese día fue cuando los ingleses llegaron aquí a Plymouth Rock y se juntaron con los indígenas allí y que celebraron y según ellos comieron pavo y quién sabe qué más, etc. Y les explico que eso no fue en verdad la primera vez que llegó el europeo. En verdad el europeo llegó un poco antes de eso, pero fue el español que cruzó a un pueblo a la par de la ciudad del Paso que se llama San Elizario, y ahí es donde llegó el español. Y al cruzar ahí se juntó con el indígena y también dio gracias. Así es que si hablamos del primer día de gracia que se ve en términos de la llegada del europeo, eso pasó no en Plymouth Rock, sino pasó aquí en San Elizario, Texas, a la par de donde está el Paso. Y para mí es importante mantener eso en mente porque nos ayuda a comprender hasta qué punto el fenómeno de la inmigración ha sido parte de la historia del ser humano. El ser humano ha estado migrando desde el principio de su existencia. Y ese es un derecho del ser humano. Es parte del derecho del ser humano que ahora las Naciones Unidas han incluido, a decir, el ser humano tiene el derecho de emigrar, especialmente cuando se trata de su protección, de su sobrevivencia, de poder sacar a su familia. Ese es derecho que no viene de los Estados Unidos, que no viene de México, que no viene de Guatemala, que no viene de Rusia, que no viene de Francia, que no viene de India, que no viene de Indonesia, sino es derecho que viene por ser humano. y nos cae a nosotros asegurar que ese derecho se pueda llevar en cabo. Qué triste es cuando alguien se para aquí y dice, hay más de 300 personas encerradas, simplemente por el hecho de ejercer un derecho fundamental como ser humano. Y mientras que hay alguien encerrado por ese motivo, nosotros como comunidad tenemos que aceptar la responsabilidad que hemos fallado. Hemos fallado porque nos toca a nosotros la responsabilidad de abrir esas puertas y soltar esa gente siguiendo el mandato de Dios que dice, libera mi pueblo, y hasta que liberemos a nuestro pueblo, a la gente de Dios, que no tiene dominización, que no tiene religión, que siempre son hijos e hijas de Dios, entonces tenemos la responsabilidad de liberar al captivo. Y no podemos descansar hasta que ese día llegue. Right? So it's important for us to keep in mind, that the right of migration, the phenomenon of migration, is a human phenomena that has existed from recorded time. Since we have an anthropologist here among us who can probably say a great deal to us about the phenomena and the discovery of the historical, archaeological proof of the movement of peoples historically, and that the right to migrate for purposes of protection, for purposes of being able to take our families ahead and make a life is a right that does not come from the state. It is a right that comes from the very intrinsic nature of what it means to be a human being, and it is very sad when someone stands up here and says to us that just 5 minutes walk from here there is a facility that is locking people up for no other reason than for having exercised one of the most fundamental of human rights, the right to migrate. And that responsibility then falls on us to work and to never cease working until the day comes that they have been freed, that the captives have been freed. And that is the command of a creator who creates and gives life to all of us. El Paso today in 2012 is a very challenging place. We're right on the border. El Paso, with 800,000 people, is a sister city to Juarez, Mexico, which right now has about 1.1 million people, maybe 1.2 or 3 million. It's very difficult. There have been times when the population was pegged at closer to 2 million. Because of the violence, there has been a great deal of displacement. As some of you may or may not know, in 2010, Juarez, Mexico became the poster child for the violence in Mexico. It actually, statistically, became the murder capital of the world. When statisticians and organizations like the FBI try to measure crime levels, the way that they do that is they simply take a particular category of crime and divide the actual incidences of the crime by 100,000 population, so you get your statistics. And on that basis, you can take any city in the world, and you can take the number of murders and divide it by 100,000 groupings, and you come up with a rate. Based on that, Juarez received the unfortunate distinction of being the murder capital of the world. More people per 100,000 population were being killed in Juarez than any other city in the world. More people were dying in Juarez. More people died in Juarez in 1 year than died in all of Iraq in that year. Than the number of soldiers dying in Afghanistan in 1 year. They were dying in Juarez, in the thousands. And with that, you gave rise to a whole new population of immigrants, refugees that were leaving. There was a tremendous amount of internal displacement from within Juarez. I kid you not, I could put you in my car and go to some neighborhoods in Juarez and drive down those neighborhoods, and you would just see house after house after house that is totally deserted. I mean, it would be the equivalent of, here in Freehold, if I find 2 or 3 city blocks, and I find a way to get all of you to leave those city blocks, and then I come in with a group of people and I go house by house, and I am going to strip those houses of everything. Like if this was a house, I would come in and I would take the smoke detectors, I would take all the light fixtures, I would rip out all of the electrical, all of the plumbing, I would take all the flooring off, I would take every single appliance, the faucets, the toilets, I would take all the windows, I would take the doors, so that when you stood outside, the only thing that was left was the shell. And you drive down these streets, and it is house after house after house after house after house that has been stripped to that level. Totally, it is a war zone. That's what they reflect. And that's what happened because people had to flee and there was no way to protect their homes. So once they fled, then the homes became fair game to strip them so that all of that could be sold and somebody made money. It could have been a game, but it also could have been people that no longer were able to hold their jobs. And this is just how they were eating. They would go in and they would strip and sell it, and that's how they would feed their family. Who knows? The result is that kind of environment. So it's very difficult. Estoy explicando que El Paso, ahorita la realidad para el inmigrante es una realidad muy difícil. El Paso es una ciudad que tiene aproximadamente 800,000 habitantes. Es ciudad gemela con la ciudad de Juárez, México, que tiene como 1.1 o 1.2 millones de habitantes. Estos últimos años se ha convertido Juárez como la ciudad más violenta en el mundo, especialmente en el año 2010, cuando, basado en las cifras que grupos como el FBI analizan al contar el número de asesinos basado en cada 100,000 de población, se puede comparar eso con ciudades de otras partes del mundo, y basado en eso pudieron determinar que la ciudad de Juárez llegó el momento cuando habían más asesinatos por 100,000 personas que cualquier otra ciudad del mundo. Más gente murió en solamente la ciudad de Juárez en 2010 que en todo el país de Irak. Para darles una idea al nivel a cual llegaron las cosas. Al deber de esa violencia hubo un desplazamiento enorme. Mucha gente que simplemente dejó la ciudad. Estamos hablando de varios cientos de miles de habitantes. Algunos de ellos que se fueron al interior del país, otros que cruzaron al Paso. Ahorita la calculación es que en el corredor del Paso, yendo como 40, 50 millas a cada lado del Paso, se calcula que se cruzaron más de 100,000 personas que simplemente que están viviendo. No hay una escuela en el Paso que si usted llega a la escuela y empieza a hablar con el director o los maestros y le preguntan, dígame, ¿qué ha pasado en esa escuela? Que no le va a decir, no, tuvimos que abrir salones bilingüe para acomodar los niños que se están matriculando, la gente que se ha cruzado y que ahora están asistiendo a las escuelas del Paso. Es que es un ambiente difícil. The displacement is such in Juarez, Mexico, that you know, that several 100,000 people have left. It's nobody really knows for sure, but it's estimated that on the El Paso corridor going 50 miles in east and west in El Paso, that perhaps 100,000 people moved over from Juarez into El Paso. They just crossed over, and so you have a very large number of people that are in the El Paso area. In El Paso, and you have to remember, I'm speaking of what that reality is like today in 2012. If you want to go back over the years, you know, I can tell you of the years when the Central American was arriving. I can tell you the years when so much of the immigration phenomenon was tied into the development of the maquila industry in Juarez. And it's interesting now that the maquila industry in Juarez is beginning to show signs of a new kind of revival. And it's a more technologically oriented type of maquila. There are strong rumors of an industrial park whose focus is going to be maquila for aeronautic assembly, which is now going to involve a more sophisticated kind of maquila assembly worker. So it's a reality that today is different than it was in the past, that for us then brings up new kinds of issues that we're being challenged with. El Paso is a city that also came to be known because it was the first place that immigration launched one of those special types of border enforcement operations, which was Operation Hold the Line, where they stationed Border Patrol vehicles every fifth of a mile right on the border, and they were kept there 24/7, so that it was literally very difficult for you to cross the border without being in line of sight of a Border Patrol agent. And so what that did, and all of us have heard of this, is what that did is it pushed the migrant population to go to other places. And of course, Arizona became the largest recipient, although now there is indication that a new phenomenon is happening, and where they are succeeding in squashing the balloon in Arizona, and you are now beginning to see crossings through the deserts in Texas. And you're seeing more of that in the statistics. To give you some sense of this, if you look at the statistics, the immigration statistics between approximately 1995 and 2005, at that point, immigration, Border Patrol was detaining upwards of about 1.2 million immigrants at that time. Of that number, of that 1.1, 1.2 million, about 450,000 of them were being detained in the San Diego area, the Tijuana, San Diego area. The next largest group was El Paso at about 350 to 380,000. Tucson sector for Border Patrol was detaining about 60, 70,000 people. And you go to Brownsville and other areas, made up the rest of that 1.1, 1.2 million detentions per year. 10 years later, after Operation Hold the Line, after Operation Gatekeeper, El Paso dropped down to about 100,000, San Diego dropped down to about 150,000, and the Tucson sector ballooned to 500,000 people. So it gives you some sense of how that, they refer to it the balloon effect, that you squish here and the balloon then expands over here. Les estoy platicando del fenómeno de la migración que nosotros ahí en El Paso hemos visto, una ciudad que tenía un flujo de migrantes muy alto, pero entonces El Paso fue conocido como el sitio la primera operación especial de parte de la patrulla fronteriza. en que usando una operación que le dieron el nombre Operation Hold the Line, que consistía en tomar un sector como de 30 millas de la frontera, y en esas 30 millas ubicaban una patrulla de la patrulla fronteriza cada quinta parte de una milla. Así es que cada quinta parte de una milla estaba una patrulla con un patrullero las 24 horas. Las 24 horas tenía la patrulla. Así es que durante esas 30 millas era imposible que un inmigrante cruzara sin que un patrullero lo pudiera ver. El efecto de eso fue empujar al inmigrante que empezara a irse a otras partes a intentar cruzar la frontera. Y lo que vimos en especial, que el inmigrante se fue al estado de Arizona, donde empezó a subir dramáticamente el número de gente que estaba cruzando por el sector de migración, que es el sector de Tucson. Y también empezamos a ver el fenómeno de muchas muertes en el desierto, en los desiertos de Arizona, porque la gente moría al resultado del calor enorme, que no calculaban bien, no llevaban suficiente agua y morían en el desierto. Interesante que ahora hay señas que, como han enfocado más recursos, más personal en el estado de Arizona, ya está empezando a haber evidencia que está disminuyendo el flujo por Arizona y está empezando a aumentar el flujo por los desiertos de Texas, y que el número de gente cruzando. Yo conozco a un señor que él vive en la ciudad de Douglas, Arizona, y el trabajo de él es, él maneja funerarias. Él tiene una funeraria en Douglas y él tiene otra funeraria en Bisbee, que están allí en la frontera de Arizona. Él tenía el contrato de recoger los restos. Cuando se encontraba un cuerpo, un resto en el desierto, le llamaban a él, y la funeraria de él tenía el contrato de ir, recoger el resto, traerlo a la funeraria y mantener el resto, mientras que se hiciera un esfuerzo a ver si se pudiera identificar, notificar a la familia y todo eso. Así que eso podía tomar ciertos números de semanas. Durante este tiempo los restos estaban en un congelador, etc. Y si se identificaba muy bien, se comunicaba al consulado mexicano, porque casi todos eran mexicanos. Se contactaba el consulado mexicano si eran de Centroamérica, el consulado de El Salvador o Guatemala o de Honduras o Nicaragua, para entonces hacer arreglos para que los restos se pudieran regresar a ese país con sus familias y que ellos se encargaran del funeral. Si no se podían identificar, entonces se enterraban, se sepultaban allí en Arizona en fosas comunes, ya ves que sin nombre, porque no se pudieron. Yo estaba platicando con él recientemente y él me dijo que durante el mes de agosto no recibió ni una llamada, ni una. Así es que eso nos está diciendo que no se encontró un inmigrante muerto. Eso no quiere decir que no murió un inmigrante, simplemente que no se encontró el cuerpo durante ese mes. Así es que eso nos da una idea de cómo va cambiando, evolucionando el fenómeno de la migración en relación, por ejemplo, a Arizona. I've been explaining that a friend of mine who owns funeral homes, who owns a funeral home in Douglas and one in Bisbee, which are border cities in Arizona, he has the contract with the coroner's office to handle bodies that are found in the desert. And he was telling me, I spoke to him just a week ago, he was telling me that during the month of August, he did not receive one call, that the coroner's office, law enforcement did not find one body in the desert. That's not to say that people didn't die, but it just means that the bodies were not found. But it's also indicative of how the phenomena is changing, how the balloon is being squashed, and it's pushing people to begin to attempt to cross into the United States through other places. Our houses of hospitality, and we run 3 facilities, 3 buildings. Right now, we are housing close to 100 immigrants. These are men, infants, women, children, ages. The majority from Mexico, but we have some people that are from Central America, Salvadoreños, Hondureños, Guatemaltecos. But it's clearly a smaller population at this point. The majority do come from Mexico, and so our work of hospitality is to give them where to sleep, the meals, and all the social service that comes with that. Part of that is of course the issue of legal representation. You don't know this, but I actually brought with me 4 people, and we're going to kidnap your attorney, and we're taking him back to El Paso, and we may hold him for ransom, and the ransom will be that you give us the funding to hire our own attorney. So if you want your attorney back, you've got to give us an attorney. So the whole aspect of legal representation for immigrants is extremely difficult in El Paso right now. There is an organization run by the Catholic Diocese called Diocesan Migrant and Refugee Services. It's a fairly large, they probably have a staff of 30 people. That includes maybe 3 or 4 attorneys, 3 or 4 accredited reps that are working. So it's a pretty big operation. You have another organization whose specialty is more asylum, Las Americas Immigrant Advocacy Center, that is also illegal. You have the Paso del Norte Civil Rights Project, and then you have United Neighborhood Organization. The key people on immigration representation is the Diocese, DMRS, and Las Americas. The greatest challenge right now, and in our houses right now, we have people that are staying with us that are going through VAWA proceedings, Violence Against Women Act. We have minors that are going through the Special Immigrant Juvenile Status process. We have U visa applicants that are going through being victims of crime and going through that process. We have one person that is going through the T visa process. And then we probably have got, I would say that 10 to 12 of our families are Mexican asylum cases. To give you a sense of what it means to have a Mexican asylum cases would be comparable for me to walk in here and say, I hope you all don't get a little bit upset. I actually have typhoid fever. And I hope that none of you get typhoid fever. Very soon this room will be empty. It's like to have typhoid fever to be a Mexican asylum seeker. It's a very challenging process. Out of every 100 petitions for asylum by Mexicans, less than 2 are being granted right now. Those are the statistics. Because it is so difficult to get asylum, and because Mexican asylum is not something anybody's ever worked on. I mean, we've just never had to work on building the casework that's necessary to support the entire asylum process. Nobody wants to do asylum. It says, I take an asylum case and I'm going to have to devote tons of hours to do the research, to do the documentation, to try and get the patterns, especially in what becomes the social group, which is the area that is most being looked upon. I need you to understand that Mexicans fleeing asylum are not fleeing the cartels. I need you to understand that Mexicans fleeing asylum are fleeing their government. They are fleeing the federal police. They are fleeing the military. You've got to understand that, and people do not understand that. People in the United States do not understand what has happened as a result of this astronomical amount of money that we send every year because of the drugs that you and I consume in the United States. You know, I just got a text while I was in Washington. I got a text from one of our former volunteers who went back to graduate school, and she's now in graduate school. And she wrote me because some of the graduate students, some of them in the graduate program that she's in, invited her on Friday evening to get together for just a social gathering. And she said, yeah. And so she went, and this is a social gathering, and now comes the marijuana, and now comes the cocaine, and it's like, you know, would you like a Coke? Would you like a beer? Would you like a joint? Would you, you know, just that informally. And of course, our volunteer staff members come to be so incredibly sensitized to the consequences of our drug use because, and here I'm not speaking about the right or wrong of drug use, I'm simply speaking about the result of the money that gets transferred to Mexico and what happens with that money. That money has been used to totally, completely corrupt every single structure in Mexico. Every single structure. Here's some examples. Have a family. This is a family in Juarez. Mama, Papa, 2 kids. Middle class. College degree, engineer, wife, nurse, professional, both of them working, have their house, have no desire to come to the United States. None whatsoever. Because they're doing very well. They are the classic middle class in Mexico. We have our lives, our kids going to school, we're fine, etc. And one day, they made the huge mistake of buying a new truck. They bought a new truck, and some of the federal police decide they like that truck. They like that truck. I'm the federal police. Look at the guns that I carry. I have access to all of this. And they stop him and they sequester him. And we want your truck. It doesn't come that way. It comes with what are you carrying, how did you get this truck, maybe you're a narco, etc. And of course you're sitting there saying, I'm not connected, and of course that makes no difference. If we've decided to connect you, so you are connected. And so you want to be free, then we need you to get your family to give us $50,000. And they may be middle class, but they're not middle class on that level. And of course he doesn't. By this point, they know where he lives, they have his address, they have the names of their children, they know where his children go to school. They go and they pick up his wife and bring his wife. And we know your kids, we want the money, etc. We don't have that kind of money, I'm not connected, etc. They strip him naked, they bring out the electrical shocks in front of her, they apply, they beat him. It reaches the point, the beatings, where he's now on the floor, he's all bloody, and his wife really believes that they've killed him. In fact, he's not dead. They eventually let her go to try and get the money. She comes out, she starts contacting people, get the money, etc. And she goes straight to the to report it to the police and files a report, my husband, etc., and what have you. The police supposedly begin to look. At this point, the federal police decide we're not going to get the money, and they dump the body. He doesn't die. The minute that they are able to, they cross into El Paso. So they come to us, they're with us, the family, etc. At the same time, there is another family whose members have been sequestered, and one of them manages to escape, also goes and reports it, and by photograph says he's one of the federal police, he's another, and identifies 4, and then flees. The government supposedly says, okay, we're going to arrest them. They arrest them, we're going to put them on trial, come back and give your testimony, because this will never end unless we have trials and we can prosecute people. He goes back to testify, and he's assassinated. Okay? Assassinated. This couple that was staying with us agreed. We had a forum, and they agreed to give their testimony. We had to disguise them so that they could not be identified, so their faces were all covered and what have you. And they gave their story, and they spoke about the federal police. And they said, we can identify the federal police, and we made the reports. We reported the crime, et cetera, et cetera. The media then runs over to Mexico and asks the representatives of the district attorney, Juarez, et cetera, and the response is, we have no idea what they're talking about. There is no report, there's no complaint. It's all disappeared. So I need you to understand that people are fleeing their own government. I need you to understand that for these kinds of reasons. First, that whatever position you may hold on the use of drugs, if for no other reasons, and we are in a university, college environment, and you and I know that there's drug use here. If for no other reason that we begin to find the courage to go up to people that are using drugs and to say to them in this manner, eye to eye, say to them, you have got blood on your hands. Unequivocal, uncategorical, says, I can't stop you, but I'm not going to let you sit there and smoke that cigarette, that joint, without saying to you, you have blood on your hands. I will not let you distance yourself from what is going on in the lives of these people. I will not let you distance yourself. So enjoy your joint, but know that it's blood on your hands. Okay? Obviously, one of the things that we in the United States need to do is look at drug policy. And of course, that is a taboo subject. That is, nobody wants to talk about it. You can't sit down with people and say, it has not worked. We've tried to keep marijuana illegal. We've tried to keep cocaine illegal. It has not worked. It is as available, it is as pervasive, it is as inexpensive as it has ever been. We have locked up more people as a society than any other country in the world, both in terms of a percentage of our population and as in sheer numbers. We have locked more people up, thinking that if we just lock up enough people, we'll bring it under control, and it has not worked. Worse is that we have built a detention industry that is now so powerful that that industry was one of the forces that engineered SB 1070 in Arizona. It was that industry that got together, and NPR did an excellent expose on this. That industry of the owners of the detention, the private detention facilities, got together and said, what can we do to create more business? And they said, we simply need to make it criminal to be undocumented. And that way, we're going to create tons of prisoners. If I was part of the detention industry, I would get all my friends and I would make speeding criminal. Because I'm going to have lots of customers. I'm going to have lots of people that I can detain, and I'm going to make a lot of profit. So we have to look at drug policy.
But we also have to assume some level, until we're there, we have to assume some level of saying the consequences of drug use are so tremendous in terms of what is happening to a country like Mexico. Very recently, and many of you may have read about this, you had 2 CIA agents operating out of the United States Embassy in Mexico City that were in a diplomatic vehicle from the embassy with diplomatic plates that were accompanied by several Mexicans on their way to a naval base where they are collaborating with the naval base on special operations on drug interdiction. On the way to the naval base, they were ambushed. They were ambushed by a group of federal police that were not in uniform. They were using vehicles, unmarked vehicles, that shot up the embassy car, which was one of these cars that has bulletproof everything, you know, and a very effective driver who managed to swerve and pull and etc. And of course, it was all shot up, and some of those bullets hit the CIA agents and a couple of the Mexicans, but nobody was killed. And of course, it's made the news. The initial report is it was mistaken identity. We did not see the diplomatic. But then, when the questions started coming, why were you not in uniforms? Why were you not using official vehicles and your federal police? And the embarrassment, of course, for the president of Mexico was the truth. I am not in control of the institutions of my country. That is the realization. The other reason that it's important to look at that is because of Plan Merida. The United States decision to assist Mexico with $1.4 billion worth of assistance that in its first birth was assistance that was primarily directed to the military and the federal police. And then after the massacre of the teenagers at Díaz de Salvarcar in January of 2010 that created a worldwide storm. You know, that was probably a seminal moment in the violence in Mexico because it brought, after all those teenagers were killed that night. And I've been to the house where the kids were killed. We're talking about literally teenagers. And they were celebrating the birthday of one of the kids, and they were a soccer team, and they were celebrating a soccer game victory. They were having a party. And these were kids that went to school, some of them worked. None of them were involved with any of the cartels. When the hit squad arrived, they blocked off the streets, they went in and they just killed them. And it's a little house, and the rooms are very small. And you know, the people that took me into the house, it says a majority of the bodies were in this room. And she says you would walk and you know, it would splash. It was all blood. It was just all of the blood from all of these bodies. And you know, it was close to 20 of these kids were killed that night. And that just woke up the international media, because then we started seeing every major national media outlet from other countries arriving to say, my God, what is going on here? Because we had no sense of what the level of the violence. After that, tremendous pressure was put on Hillary Clinton to look at Plan Merida, and they began to tweak Plan Merida to then begin to redirect more of the funds toward social development and away from the military and the federal police, but still a very large amount of that money is headed in that. And so les he estado explicando el fenómeno de la violencia en Juárez, y no solamente en Juárez, sino en todo México, y la conexión entre esa violencia y el tráfico de la droga, y la realización de que el tráfico de la droga resulta en un traslado de una cantidad enorme de dinero de los Estados Unidos a México. el cual dinero que entonces se usa para corruptar todas las instituciones que una sociedad necesita para poder funcionar, empezando con la institución de la policía, las instituciones de jurídica del país, los que hacen las leyes, la legislatura, el fenómeno de la corrupción de los oficiales elegidos, que ese traslado de dinero lo hace imposible que haya credibilidad, porque todos están implicados en la corrupción. Y que parte de eso para nosotros, porque aquí en los Estados Unidos, en muchos lugares, especialmente en lugares como aquí donde estamos, donde hay tantas universidades cercanas, donde es un ambiente universitario, donde muchos de esos jóvenes se les hace muy fácil fumar un cigarro de marihuana. Se les hace muy fácil, se les hace muy inocente. Y que parte de nuestra responsabilidad es enfrentar y decirles, ¿saben qué? Cada vez que ustedes fuman un cigarro de marihuana, cada vez que ustedes hacen uso de la cocaína, tienen la sangre de la gente de México en sus manos. Y nos detenemos de ser tan francos con la gente de esa manera. Pero yo creo que tenemos la responsabilidad de hacerlo de esa manera, porque está muriendo la gente al deber de la corrupción que resulta, al deber de la pérdida de todo nivel de seguridad. ¿Saben? Cuando a alguien en Juárez, si alguien, ¿qué es lo primero que hacemos nosotros si estamos en nuestra casa y alguien intenta meterse por la ventana? ¿Qué es lo primero que hacemos? 911, llamamos a la policía, que les llamamos para que vengan porque alguien se intentó. En Juárez, nadie le habla a la policía, nadie, porque le tienen miedo a la policía. Tenemos una familia con nosotros, una señora con su esposo y sus 3 hijos. Ellos vivían en una vecindad, en una calle, que a la esquina de la calle había una tiendita pequeña donde vendían abarrotes y era una tienda pequeña, y los dueños eran una pareja anciana. Esta mañana, antes de irse al trabajo, el esposo se levanta a ir a la tiendita y él va caminando y está en su mente su trabajo y todo, y va llegando, y antes de llegar a la tiendita se fija que hay un SUV negro y que ahí está con las ventanas polarizadas, y ahí está, y se fija que la puerta de la tiendita está abierta. Así es que llega y inmediatamente ya se cisca y para, y ahí se para y dice que al ratito hombres salen con la pareja, con estos ancianitos, salen, suben y se los llevan, dejan la puerta abierta y se los llevan. Entonces él se acerca a la tienda, se asoma, la tienda abierta, ahí todo, excepto los viejitos. Así es que él regresa a su casa y le llama a la policía a reportar que él cree que alguien se los ha secuestrado, y lo reportan. Él haciendo su responsabilidad cívica. Y bien, lo reporta y todo eso, y ellos le dicen, muy bien, nosotros vamos a investigar y todo eso. Llega la policía, le dicen, vaya a su trabajo, nosotros vamos a investigar, ok, muy bien. Y pues le dice su esposa, ok, ya me voy al trabajo, los niños van a la escuela. Él se va a su trabajo. Unas horas después, vienen 2 hombres, no en uniforme. Vienen, tocan la puerta, la esposa abre la puerta y preguntan por el esposo. ¿Dónde está? No, pues él está trabajando. Él trabaja en bienes y raíces, y ella pensó, alguien que anda buscando, quiere saber de una propiedad. Pero entonces se fija que traen pistola. Y les dicen, no, pues él está trabajando, él no está aquí, cuando regrese, etc. Sí, y muy bien, ahí regresamos. Inmediatamente le llaman, y él entonces empieza a realizar lo que está pasando. Le dice, ve a la escuela, recoge a los niños y salte, vete a la casa de mi mamá. Se sale de su casa, se va con la mamá de él a esperar allí, él deja su trabajo, él va a la casa, le pregunta, toma todos los detalles y empieza a realizar la conexión. Yo le llamé a los policías. Los policías vinieron, obtuvieron información, saben quién soy y entonces le avisaron a los que se llevaron a los viejitos para que entonces pudieran venir. Y exacto. Entonces le dijo la esposa, yo voy a ir a la casa, por la puerta de atrás, se cruza la pared que tienen en la yarda por atrás, se cruza por atrás, entra a empezar a sacar cosas y mientras que él está allí, ahí viene a tocar la puerta. Él se asoma, los hombres con la pistola. Entonces no abre la puerta, se queda totalmente callado como que si la casa está abandonada. Cuando ellos se van, coge las cosas, coge su familia y va a ser presente en el puesto. La conexión entre lo que está pasando y la policía. One of the things that we have been doing, and we are encouraged, and this is something that here, my hope is that by my sharing this with you, that some of you will have some ideas and say, wow, yeah, that might be a possibility. We have started working with law schools. We've worked with the University of Texas School of Law in Austin, Texas, and very, very recently, the Law School, University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, both of which have immigration clinics within the law schools. And both of them have agreed to accept asylum case from us, families. Now, it has meant the relocation of these families to these cities. So we just, 3 weeks ago, we just sent a father and a mother and their 2 teenage kids from Mexico, and they just arrived here in Philadelphia, and we had a very difficult time finding hospitality, but eventually a group from under the umbrella of the Religious of the Assumption came together and formed a group to say, we'll take on the responsibility, and they started pulling people in to find them a place to live, etc. Because the university, the law school of the University of Pennsylvania, needs them to be there to represent them. So we moved them. We've been able to actually move 5 families to Austin, and the University of Texas in Austin has taken on the representation of these Mexican asylum. And so the reason I'm sharing this with you is that if you are aware of law schools in this area that have immigration clinics, we really, really need to connect with you. And more than that, we need you to advocate on our behalf in pushing these law schools to consider taking on the representation of these families. And it's going to mean relocating them, it's going to mean finding a way to do hospitality and helping them while they get employment authorization. But it's just a very important way of trying to get representation for a population that in El Paso we just cannot get representation for this population. You need to understand that many of our families are coming to us after we have a woman with her she has sons. All of her kids are 3 sons, and they came into her home and they took her husband and they executed him right outside her home. When they came into her home, they were actually in her home, and they got her out of her bedroom and they put her in one of the bedrooms with her 3 kids, and they didn't know what was going to happen. But they came specifically looking for her husband. They killed her husband. After they killed him and she buried him, she said to herself, because they came in specifically asking for my husband, they're not, and they could have killed me too, and they didn't. I don't believe that I am at risk, and she did not flee. Now that her husband was gone, she had to go out and look for work, so she went and found a job at a restaurant. There at the restaurant, it was a restaurant bar open to the public. On this particular day, several units of the federal police arrived. Supposedly, we are here to do an investigation to see if there are drugs or guns in this bar. So they line up all the patrons, they line up all of the workers, the waitresses, etc., the bartender, everybody's lined up, everybody is physically searched, and then they go through the entire restaurant to look for guns and drugs, and they found neither. So after they did that, the federal police left, they got in their vehicles and drove away. She said it was not 5 minutes. It was not 5 minutes when the hit squad then arrived. When they come in, no questions, nothing. They come with high caliber guns and begin to shoot. They shoot at everything and everyone. That day, some 15, 16 people were killed. She said that I was one of 13 waitresses. 5 of us survived. The other 8 died that day. She said, as the firing was going, you know, we threw ourselves and just high power. He says there are weapons that when it hits you, it doesn't just make a hole in you. He says it takes a piece of your body. She says, I actually, as I was crawling through the floor, I actually put my hand on brain matter, somebody's brain matter, as I was, and then there was a point where I just froze. I just couldn't move because of the fear. And then one of my co-workers, another one of the women there, said to me, we've got to get out of here. I smell smoke. They're going to burn the place down. She said, I just couldn't move. She says, you've got to, Christina, you've got to get out of here. They're going to burn the place. And sure enough, they had already started burning the place. They managed to get out. 3, once they get out, 3 of the 5 waitresses that survived, by sheer providential, 3 of them turned this way, her and her friend turned this way. These 3 all went in the direction where the hit squad was still there. They died. Her and her friend go this way, and they managed to get away. She gets her kids, and she crosses over, and then she finds out that her other friend has been found, and she has now been killed. Okay? That helps you to understand how the federal police set up the hit. They came to make sure that when the hit squad arrived, there would be no resistance. So that we're looking for drugs and guns really was a question of, we want to make sure that when the hit squad arrives, there will be no resistance. You know? So it's really important for us to begin to be able to access legal representation. The resources in El Paso are just simply oversaturated. And so by my coming here, I come first to say to you that we as a country, this is not a situation where I'm coming because there's been an earthquake in Haiti and I need to get you to begin to see how you might be able to help the victims of the earthquake. I am coming here to say that we are intimately connected to what is happening in Mexico, and the primary focus of people in the United States has been, we just want to make sure that it doesn't cross the border. That's our emphasis. Just leave us alone, just don't let it cross the border, secure the border, and of course, there are politicians galore whose whole thing is, you elect me and I will bring more border security. That we are intimately connected. Second, that the way that we are intimately connected is because of the consumption of the drugs, the laundering of the money. The U.S. Peace Caravan, led by Javier Cecilia, has just arrived in Washington, D.C. They were there 2 days ago in New York City, and there in New York City, the caravan went to one of the HSBC banks, which has been under investigation for laundering money, and he took play money that had been painted red to symbolize the blood, and he went into the bank and says, I want you to open up a bank account for me. I want you to open a bank account with my blood money. You have no problems laundering the money as a result of the drug sales. Now open up for me. So it was a common type of thing. So the use of drug policy, the laundering of the money, you cannot possibly send $25 to $40 billion per year into Mexico without it involving your major financial institutions. The trafficking of the guns. The trafficking of the guns. The vast majority of the guns being used to kill people in Mexico. There are guns, folks. There are guns. And human rights and immigration policy. We have put so much enforcement on the border that we've created an entire industry in the marketing of human beings. I can tell you some stories about what is happening with Central American immigrants trying to cross to Mexico that would blow you away. It just would blow you away, especially in states like in Saltillo, where people, Central Americans are coming, and they're being caught, and they're being held for ransom, and they're being tortured, some of them being killed because they cannot be ransomed, and clear-cut examples that when she cannot be ransomed, I send her into that room, and there is a surgeon there, and we take her kidneys and send them into the organ trade, because she's of no other value to me. You know? So, and that's the result because immigrants can't flow through anymore. There's a huge movement in Mexico of trying to get the Mexican government to protect the Central American immigrant because things have become, and of course, we are all familiar with the massacre of the 72 Central Americans in San Fernando, in Saltillo. So I'm here to say this is how we are connected to this thing. We are not bystanders. We are involved. We are complicit in this thing. Second, I'm here to say to you, legal representation is a real important aspect of it. This is something that is concrete, it is tangible, it is something that if any of you have connections to universities, if any of you, that would be immensely helpful to us. And then, of course, if we do find a university, there's going to be the aspect of the hospitality. People that are willing to say, you know, we're going to have to find a way to receive this family and keep them afloat while they can get their petition for employment authorization and then begin to support themselves. Les estoy diciendo que una de las maneras que yo vengo aquí este día primeramente para hablar de la realidad, para concientizarnos a nosotros de la manera en que estamos conectados con los temas de la realidad que se está viviendo, que los Estados Unidos a través del consumo de la droga, el lavado del dinero que está regresando a México, el tráfico de las armas que están, y luego la política de inmigración que se ha estado usando estos últimos 10 años, en que es principalmente una política de seguridad que ha empezado a encerrar al inmigrante centroamericano que está cruzando por México, que se ha convertido como una comunidad de venta por los grupos criminales en México, donde están tomando al inmigrante, lo están secuestrando en cambio por el dinero, y cuando la familia no puede pagar ese dinero, hay casos claramente que ahora se está traficando en los órganos, donde les quitan el riñón, les quitan partes para entonces traficarlos de esa manera. Que para nosotros es muy importante que gente nos ayude a encontrar escuelas de leyes que tienen clínicas de inmigración dentro de la escuela de ley, que posiblemente considerarían aceptar la representación de personas pidiendo asilo político, y luego que hubiera un apoyo en lo que es la hospitalidad necesaria cuando una familia se tiene que reubicar de la frontera a donde está la escuela de ley y donde está la representación. Preguntas, questions.
actually 2 lawyers here to kidnap.
Good.
Late arrival, raise your hand, good.
Raise your hand, too. Thank you.
Yeah, so I had a question actually regarding the asylum cases you mentioned. Now, I actually have a couple of cases, but I'm more trying to go from the angle of the Convention Against Torture. And is that something that you also looked at? Because the social group analysis, there's already been a number of federal circuit courts that the issue's gone before, and they've said that, well, I guess your case is a little different because it's actually the government, but still social group analysis is still pretty difficult given the case law that's out there right now. Have you had any cases, or have you had any success with Convention Against Torture cases? And for those of you who don't know, so the United Nations has this convention, the Convention Against Torture. Basically, it says that if a person has a reason to fear being tortured by their government or by people who the government will not stop, and there's a likelihood that they will in fact be tortured if they return to their country, then they cannot be sent back. So have you had any cases like that, or have you seen any success with those?
We have had several of our guests receive asylum, but they've all been affirmative claims. They've all gone through the asylum officer and not in the immigration courts. And so it's being able to get people into the country without being put in removal proceedings is a huge advantage because they can then file affirmatively. And your asylum officers, we have discovered that your asylum officers come to the asylum issue from such a different perspective than the immigration judges do. The immigration judges, the University of Syracuse, which does the analysis on asylum of every single immigration judge, the asylum judges in El Paso are among the absolute worst. And they, of course, none of it is public, but informally, they will tell you that we're under pressure not to grant asylum. We're under pressure not to grant, and they're living up to that. So the Denise Gilman, who is one of the co-directors of the immigration clinic for the H.E. Austin School of Law's clinic, she was down. She brought a group of law students to El Paso, and they were there for a week. And then she also arranged for one of the law students to spend an entire summer living at Annunciation House, which was very, very helpful to us. She spent a lot of time talking with us about the social group, but she also mentioned the Convention on Torture as a very real. And people like this man who was tortured, who had the truck, etc., you have a very strong possibility there. Not so much so when you have the man who reported the elderly couple that had been kidnapped and that they came looking for him. It's not, So I think that there are two things that need to be worked.
And just one other follow-up question. Do you see any possibility, or is there any movement or discussion in El Paso, surrounding areas on the border, of the possibility of advocating for some kind of legislation for Mexican asylum seekers similar to NACARA that was passed by President Clinton for the Nicaraguan, El Salvadoran, and people from Guatemala?
Annunciation House started, and it's on our website. It's a petition for the protection of immigrants, Mexican asylum seekers, and it gives a little bit of the history of asylum and how it's being wholesale. And so there's a petition there, and we're asking people to download it and send it in to the key people from Obama to Clinton to Napolitano to Morton, etc. And so in this environment right now, when you can't even get headway on the DREAM Act, which would seem as innocent and which historically
historically many Republicans were in favor of the DREAM Act, and they've become less so since the Tea Party has just gotten a stranglehold. The chances of something passing are just so remote. If anything were to happen, it would have to be Obama doing it by executive order. And who knows? You know, maybe that's what it'll take. If he gets reelected, maybe that's what it'll take. That on January 20th, on the State of the Union, he says to Congress, you either give me comprehensive immigration, or here are the executive orders that are going to come down. And one of them could be temporary protective status for Mexicans. And folks, that means that with one signature, I will in effect legalize 8 million undocumented people. So they either give it to me, any of this.
I don't understand in the case that you were talking about where I guess it was the federal police came to the house and assassinated the husband. So she didn't think she was.
No, it was not the, well, if it was the federal police, she doesn't know. She doesn't know who the men were that came to her house and assassinated her husband.
I can't understand what the purpose of all of that. I mean, in the other case, you said they kidnapped somebody and tried to get ransom money, and then, I mean, that's really horrendous, especially when
Her husband worked in a used car dealership, and they begun to ask for extortion money from the car dealer. The owner, his boss, refused to pay the extortion. They came to her house and they killed him because the boss would not pay the extortion. They also killed the boss. They also went to the boss's house and killed him. Because the extortion was for the cars, for the dealership. Because when they came to her house, they specifically came to look for him. Because they came into her house and they had her and the kids in a room, and they could have killed them as well, and they did not. She convinced herself that they were not after her.
but they still were. Because
And she doesn't know that the killing of her husband is in some way connected to the hit on the restaurant bar. She does not know that. What she does know is that the federal police set it up. She knows that. And she knows because she was a survivor of that massacre that she's a wanted person. And when they found and killed her friend, it confirmed. Okay. Yes.
I'm confused about the hit on the restaurant. I mean, was that just to terrorize people and to say we're in control? What was the purpose?
We don't know. We don't know what's involved there. You know, I've had lengthy conversations with her to ask her, was the owner of the restaurant trafficking? Were drugs being sold? This is, I work there and I'm not aware of any drugs being sold. Was he involved? She does not know that. So right now I don't have an answer to that.
But on the question of asylum, I mean, I don't understand, I mean, I do understand why our government is probably not granting asylum cases. I mean, because we're supporting Mexico. I mean, and we're sending them the money and we're sending them the guns, like you said. It's our guns doing all of this. So it would seem rather strange to then say, okay, well, we're going to give all these people asylum after we're the ones who are responsible for it. I mean, there seems like there's a direct conflict between our government acknowledging the reason why there should be asylum.
Have you ever heard of something called the American Baptist Church versus Attorney General Thornburg? Have you ever heard of that case? This is really, really important historically. When the Central Americans, specifically Salvadoreños and Guatemaltecos, were fleeing their country and they would cross through Mexico, this was in the 80s, they would arrive and they would seek asylum. When you would sit down with Salvadoreños or Guatemaltecos and you would talk to Pedro or Jose or whatever and what is the story and tell me what's happened. What you would hear is, you would hear about the indiscriminate killing by the militaries. You would also hear about the death squads.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
Okay, and they would come up and they were fleeing that. And when people would apply for asylum on their behalf, they were consistently denied the asylum. Statistically, 4 out of every 100 Salvadoreños were granted asylum. 96 out of 100 were denied. With Guatemaltecos, it was actually worse. It was 9/10 of 1 out of every 100 was granted asylum. Okay. It was such a wholesale denial of asylum that a coalition of legal projects gathered nationally and filed a lawsuit against the Attorney General of the United States, because that was before 9/11, and at that time, immigration was under the Justice Department. So they filed a lawsuit in 1985 against the Attorney General of the United States, who at that time was Thornburg. Okay? And the heart of the lawsuit was that you are not following the law, and you're not following the law for political reasons. What are the political reasons? You just told me those political reasons. Exactly the same thing. Because we are funding the government / military, you can't very well fund that and then give people who are fleeing them asylum. So you deny asylum. And the way they would deny asylum is, if you were Salvadoreño or Guatemalteco and you applied for asylum, it was standard practice of immigration to take your application and send it to the State Department for an opinion. The opinion of the State Department always came back that said, we do not think, we, the State Department, who knows the country conditions, we do not believe that this person meets the criteria for asylum. Immigration, who had no knowledge of the country conditions, then would take that opinion and use it as the decision and would deny them. So, from the day that it was filed, this lawsuit in 1985, the Justice Department put all kinds of motions to try and stop it. And little by little, every motion was dealt with and disposed of, all the way for 5 years. That lawsuit in federal court here in Washington was worked. Finally, 1990 comes. All the motions have been disposed of, and we finally have a date for the start of the trial. So they arrive, here come all the attorneys from the Justice Department, here come all the attorneys for the American Baptist Church under the umbrella, they come in, the attorneys for the Justice Department walk up and say to the federal judge, we concede the case. We concede the case. Many people believe that the reason the Justice Department did that was because they did not want to allow all the witnesses that had been subpoenaed to give testimony. So they said, it is in our interest to simply say. Now, the order of the federal judge was monumentally significant. After they conceded, and the date was set for the judgment for the judge, this is what he said. Number one, every single case for political asylum from a Salvadoreño or a Guatemalteco that applied for asylum during the entire past 10 years is hereby overturned. Every single denial, he overturned it. Number two, if as a result of denying asylum to one of these people you deported them, you are going to have to make a good faith effort to find him or her in their home country and tell them that you're going to let them back in that you're going to give them employment authorization and that you're going to give them 18 months during which to re-prepare their asylum case and refile it if they're still alive. And so here you had immigration buying space in newspapers saying, if we deny you your asylum, we deport you, we're going to let you back in. Okay? The third thing that the judge said, I am prohibiting you from deporting anyone from El Salvador or Guatemala that is physically present in the United States as of the date of this signing, and you must allow them to surface, and if they surface, you have to give them all 18 months employment authorization so that they can then go and freely seek legal representation and apply for asylum. Fourth, you have to restructure how you do asylum. It was as a result of that decision that the whole asylum officer came into existence, where now you have asylum officers and people can file affirmatively for asylum. And that asylum is being heard by officers who have been trained in country conditions. Monumental. So you're absolutely correct. So here we are, 2012, and we have a situation where we are helping to sustain a government that is oppressing its own people. Yes. So you're right on. You're right on. Yes.
Yeah, those guys, but during the restaurant, it was. You said it was the federal police or the judicial police? Who'd you say it was?
It is the federal police.
The federal police.
It would be comparable to the United States doesn't exactly have a federal police. It would be comparable to like the U.S. Marshal's Office structure, because Mexico has an FBI equivalent as well. So it's not exactly like the FBI, but it is a federal law enforcement entity that is structured federally down into the states.
Okay. Now, do they have like gang relations, or did it? Because I just want to know the reason for the the violence and for the interrogate. Like you said, like they made up the reports to shoot up the restaurant against the gang cartels and everything. Do they have ties to any of those gangs or anything? Or
That's exactly the problem. The problem is that if she and I are running the drug cartel, we can't do it on our own. If you're a federal police, then it's in our interest to invite you to lunch. And at that lunch, we're going to make things very attractive for you. And so the goal is to get you to work for us. Okay?
And the thing with the kidnap, I forgot, not that shooting on the highway, you said, I forgot.
With the CIA agents.
No, the armored car, you said.
Yes, the CIA agents traveling in the embassy vehicle.
Yeah. And that was the federal police as well that happened? Okay, you said they weren't in uniform,
They were not in uniform, and they were not using federal police vehicles, they were using unmarked cars. And this, you just Google in shooting of CIA agents in Mexico. This is something that just happened in the last 2 months.
Because I was just going to say, it reminded me of a movie I saw. I don't know if you ever heard of the movie Man on Fire with Denzel Washington. There is, what happens is in the movie, he's supposed to be a bodyguard to this,
little girl.
Yeah, that little girl for that rich man. And what happens is when she goes to her piano recital, she gets kidnapped by, they were called the judicial police in the movie. I guess that's supposed to reflect the federal police in real life. And they were in unmarked cars and they were wearing regular clothes, and they kidnapped her on the street and shot the bodyguards and everything. So I just wanted to know if that movie was like any accuracy to real life, because in the movie they were like part of a gang called the Brotherhood or something. I just want to know in real life if it was not the gang itself, but if they were like related to the cartels, or it was just their like own thing or something.
One of the things that when President Calderon decides to declare war on the cartels, one of the things that you end up learning is that the cartels have never worked in a vacuum. They have done their work very much contexted in the structures of society. All of these years, they have been paying police, they have been paying federal police, they have been paying army personnel, they have been buying legislatures, they have been buying judges. So the system worked because it had evolved and it was working. The mistake that Calderon made is he rocked the boat. And when he rocked the boat, it was like, oh my God, look at the extent to which all of our structures are compromised. It would be the equivalent of Obama deciding that he wants to clamp down. What's a criminal?
The Crips.
Pardon me?
The Crips.
Right, giving a gang.
Yeah, let's say that Obama decided that he wants to clamp down on gang activity in the United States. And so he unleashes the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, he unleashes them, only to discover that many of these agents are on the payroll of his gang. And when he tries to go to court, he discovers that judges are on the payroll of his gang. And so he just opens his eyes and he says, I have a nightmare on my hands, because now when the President of Mexico has embassy personnel from the United States attacked by his own police, it's like, I'm not in control. I'm not in control. And so if you're the President of Mexico, who do you then go to? Who do you go to say, provide me with credible law enforcement? Who do you go to? Because you've just seen, I don't know who's credible.
NATO?
Right, well, that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, so then what is the solution? Even if in the unlikely circumstance that U.S. money dried up and we no longer were funding all this, I mean, which is highly unlikely, but saying, hypothetically, I mean, if the U.S. money dried up, the guns were no longer being sold, what other solution is there? I mean,
clearly, if you can reduce the flow of money, that's a big key. You know, if 25 to $40 billion can be reduced, there's a lot of payrolls that aren't going to be met. Now, is that going to tempt people that have been dependent on drug money to get into other criminal activity? All the signs are that they would get into other criminal activity. You know, more kidnappings, more extortion, very possibly. But the dynamic would begin to change if you can reduce the level of money that is resulting from drug consumption. Yeah, so, yes, ma'am.
So then what is your stand, or what you think would happen, you know, if we do, like, we stopped all war on drugs and legalized most drugs, and so then we're not dealing with cartels for supply?
You know, that's a very
What's
good
your
question.
stand on that?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I'm going to answer it in two ways.
2 weeks.
I'm gonna answer it.
Somebody said 2 weeks.
It's gonna take 2 weeks to answer that question.
I'll be gone by then. I'm gonna answer it in 2 ways. First, we have to look at that question and take the responsibility that what we're saying is, I have this policy here that is costing your lives. Do I have a right to that policy? So, you see, in other words, I'm trying to make the answer to the question, what will happen, conditional on my changing the policy, because it's not our lives that are being lost. It's somebody else's. So in a way,
Yeah, but
I'm kind of saying, you know, there's a certain level of acceptance. You know, right now, how many U.S. soldiers have died in Afghanistan from suicide of soldiers from Afghanistan? How many? And what have we just done? What just this past week, what did we decide to do? We've started reducing the training of Afghan soldiers. Okay? So it's their policies that tend to look at our lives as having a different value than somebody else's lives. Okay? So one of the ways that I want to answer the question is that the very question itself has problems. The very question itself. Okay? And I think that we need to sit with that a little bit, you know. I speak to many groups, and this is a very supportive, pro-immigrant group. Let me tell you, I speak to groups that are miles away from this group, okay? And of course, they clobber me on, you know, and we're going to have a lot more drug consumption, and our kids are going to be addicted, and et cetera, et cetera. And all you're telling me is that your kids have greater value than their kids.
But in this country, it depends what kids you're talking about. Because
True.
the war on drugs has incarcerated more people in this country.
But
who
it hasn't
now
killed
have-
them. It hasn't killed them. And they're
Well,
not being massacred.
maybe-
And they're not going into restaurants and killing everybody
Right,
in
exactly.
restaurants, okay? And so we need to, you know, we need to recognize the differences of the nature of the violence. I cannot drive through one of your neighborhoods and see entire block after block like it's been bombed out. Okay, so the kind of violence is very different. The results of the violence is very different. The other way that I would answer the question is that I am one of those individuals that I've reached this age in my life and I've never used drugs. I've never smoked even one joint, and I've never held it and smoked it, but not inhaled either. So I've gone. So the reason I say that to you is because you would think that I would be one of those people that would be adamantly against the legalization of drugs.
No, not necessarily.
I never used drugs. I would never encourage people to use drugs. I would not want my kids or my grandkids to use drugs, etc. Having said that, I believe that the legalization of drugs would then confront our society with another social challenge in the same way that alcohol is a social challenge for us, and the concerns that universities have about binge drinking and all of that, and it is very real. I believe that we have not been able to honestly speak and name a national social problem. And that is to try and imagine the President of the United States at the State of the Union say to the American people, to Congress and the state and the American people, folks, we have a problem with addiction that is cultural. We can speak about this problem in terms of alcohol use. We can speak about this problem in terms of gambling. We can speak about this problem in terms of sex. We can speak about this problem in terms of drugs. These are the different symptoms of a culture that has created a certain propensity to addiction. I stand before you as your president to say, we've launched wars on drugs, and we've launched wars on poverty, and we've launched races to the moon, and we've launched all these things. But we have not launched a national effort to try and understand our culture and why it is that our culture creates this need for this kinds of addictions. I want to propose that we make a national commitment, provide the funding to our social scientists to help us understand why do we go to make use of alcohol or sex or drugs or gambling. Why do we do that as an alternative to dealing with the things that we face in the process of living out our lives? We just don't know enough. And up to now, these things have scared us, and every time we get scared, we turn to the man with the badge and the gun, thinking that the man with the badge and the gun is somehow going to fix it. And of course, it doesn't. So in one way, I don't have an answer to your question other than it's a social problem, and we are not speaking about it in ways that we need to, as we do about all social problems. So, okay. Yes.
Maybe we could use a restorative justice circle process. You know, because that would be, you know, maybe we could have people who are suffering this in Mexico. We do it like the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, but right now, you know, when the things are in the mess that they're in, because then you could maybe, you know, make a documentary of it where you have people who've been impacted on both sides, and maybe, you know, I mean, that could be a very powerful message.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sure. And it's a matter of how do we, at what moment do we begin that kind of conversation, you know, where someone with the weight of the office of the presidency can come and say, we need to look at this. You were talking about how we live our lives, our children. So, thank you so very much for your time. It's been a delight to be here.
No hay egoísmo, tampoco maldad. Sirven a su hermano con humanidad. Sirven a su hermano con humanidad.
Sí, por favor, traducir personas.
Yes, try to. So today, the 9th of September, I will not even go there.
You have to say.
You do not want to hear me sing. Today, the 9th of September, we are in time of fiesta for the blessings from the heaven that the angels are flying to help us, the immigrants here in the struggle. Thank you to God who is in heaven, and to Ruben Garcia. Welcome. That's on the moment translation. It probably be better than me, that God should bless everyone in your struggles. and in this struggle that we need to continue. We walk along the border, and that we not be afraid. Help our brother without having expectation of something in return. Trust our instinct. Know our instinct, know our instinct, know our instinct, and listen to that instinct. We have an angel. We have 2 angels. Read anything else. Within Casa Freehold, has our hand and humanity. Thank you, God, for that she's here. We are in the path, and you go along with us. There are no boundaries. There are no frontiers. We are all brothers and sisters. There should not be no egoismo. We know what that means, yes? Nor any bad feeling. Stay with your sister and with your brother for all humanity. Before that, Ruben, if you can, I would like to give you your honorary T-shirt of Casa Freehold.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias.
Me gustaría dar una playera de Casa Freehold como miembro de honor de Casa Freehold. Ese también, tal vez le gustaría. Ese, empezando aquí, escribió las reglas de la vida. Están hechos de nuestros trabajadores.
Ah, qué bien.
Y es en la lista de ellos que cada día llegando, y yo trato de estar a su lado, poniendo en la lista. Y el principio es respeto, un hermano al otro. Y ya si pasa 15 por trabajar, el próximo día empezamos con 16 y pasamos día por día por día. 7 días a la semana, pues nosotros no teníamos ni fines de semana. So I give to Ruben the rules of work that are made by the workers themselves. And they can be revised by the workers themselves to make them better. And also the list, and the list is every day. They can put themselves on the list. They can work, say, number 1 to 15, and the next day they will start with number 16. You know, they have made this system. Maybe if we share with anybody, and I really welcome these people from other places that are struggling with us. You know, we welcome Cata, we welcome Casa Esperanza, and we welcome Karina, who's been working hard for some years in the visitation. And we have, right now we have the opportunity to have, here in Freehold, we have about always at least 300 people in detention, right here, about maybe. We can walk there in 5 minutes to the jail. So, and we know in the rest of New Jersey, we have, you know, other couple thousand people at least. How many would you estimate, Nelson?
Many, I say many.
Yeah, at least 2,000 or 3,000 in New Jersey. We have the opportunity this fall to have some people, you know, work with us, some as volunteers, some as paid interns in this visitation program. And Karina and I and others are going to work together to make this a strong visitation program. So this is the information, and it'll be right here, you know.
Can we pass it around?
Podemos pasar, sí, está. So es, you know, como en cualquier momento hay al menos 300 gente aquí en este cárcel de Freehold, solamente detenidos, no por hacer ningún delito, nada más ser inmigrante sin papeles. y ya otros que están más al norte. Aquí, en esta sala, hay mucho, yo puedo ver muchos afectados que han pasado por esa experiencia o tienen su familia en esa situación. Yo no quiero decir levantar las manos, pero yo puedo. Yo sé que hay bastantes manos que ya van a levantar si yo digo a los afectados. Y la verdad, todos somos los afectados, porque está haciendo el mundo un lugar peor por tener tantos intención en curarse. So, we have sitting right here in this room, we have people who have been in detention who are going through this process of fighting, or else they have a family member in detention, and this is a big part of our struggle day after day after day. So please join us in this dissertation program. It's very important. Especially here, we have people from upstate New York. And we see the people traveling all the way from upstate New York. They get here, they're a little late. They don't let them go in to see the person. So I can't get there. So we ask if you could please turn off cell phones. Y ahorita podemos apagar teléfonos. Por un respeto a todos. Gracias. So,
agradezco muchísimo la bienvenida que me han extendido. Yo les digo a ustedes que yo me siento muy en casa aquí con ustedes. Este es el tipo de comunidad donde yo me encuentro en casa, es el tipo de gente luchadora, inmigrante, con quien yo vivo y pues me siento muy feliz por estar aquí con ustedes y poder compartir un tiempecito con ustedes. Yo quiero empezar explicándoles un poquito del trabajo que yo hago para que tengan una idea, que tengan un contexto del cual entender de lo que yo voy a hablar esta tarde. La Casa de Annunciation lleva para 35 años, entonces que tenemos muchos años haciendo este trabajo. Estamos en la mera frontera con los Estados Unidos y México, Ciudad Juárez en el lado de México, El Paso en el lado de los Estados Unidos. Y el trabajo de nosotros, el enfoque principal ha sido un enfoque de hospitalidad, darle la bienvenida al inmigrante, muchos de ellos indocumentados. Así es que una de las cosas que yo considero un don para mí es de que he tenido yo la oportunidad de ser testigo del fenómeno de la inmigración a través de muchos años y poder ver la evolución de esa migración y también ser testigo de cómo es que nuestro país ha cambiado a través de ese tiempo. Mucha gente conoce el tema de migración ahora estos últimos días y piensa que eso es la realidad que se ha vivido siempre, cuando la verdad es que en tiempos atrás ha sido una realidad muy distinta. I'd like to start by giving you some sense of the context within which I live and work, so as to help you understand, what I have to say, that it comes out of that context. Annunciation House is now about to complete 35 years. Through that period of time, we've been able to welcome, to see through our houses, in excess of 125,000 people have passed through our houses. I say to people that I consider myself especially gifted in having had the opportunity to witness the evolution of immigration as you see people coming through. You hear the experience of Ellis Island, you hear the experience of the California coast, and very few people have stopped to consider the role that the state of Texas, cities like El Paso have played in the immigration phenomenon as
more than 125,000 people have passed through our house, have stayed with us. We've had over 125,000 guests. Obviously, only a small number of those who have crossed through our border passed through our house. So there have been hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people that have passed through that corridor. El Paso, its name, the pass to the north. You know, we trace our roots in El Paso back almost 400 years. The mission churches there go back. I dare say none of you know this. None of you know this. That the first Thanksgiving did not take place on Plymouth Rock. Okay? It did not. In fact, the European arrived in a little town right outside El Paso that is known as San Elizario.
Okay, and I'm going to turn over to Ruben. Ruben is a professor of sociology at Georgian Court University. Ella es profesora de sociología en la Universidad Georgian Court en México. Y también es luchadora.
Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon to everybody. Me da un placer estar aquí con ustedes otra vez. Pero primeramente yo quiero darle una bienvenida al señor Ruben Garcia. Bienvenido a Freehold, a nuestra comunidad en Casa Freehold. But first of all, I would like to welcome Ruben Garcia to Lakewood, to our community in Casa Freehold. Para los que no conocen al señor Garcia, yo quiero dar una introducción breve. For those of you who don't know Ruben Garcia, I would like to give you a very short introduction. El señor Garcia es uno de los fundadores y el actual director de la Casa Annunciation en El Paso, Texas, donde ha dedicado su vida a darles hospedaje a numerosos inmigrantes, a los pobres, a los marginados en nuestra comunidad. He is one of the founders and the director of Annunciation House in El Paso, Texas, where for many years he and his community have provided hospitality to thousands of immigrants, the poor, and the marginalized of our society. Pax Christi de Estados Unidos, el Movimiento Católico Nacional de Paz, ha reconocido la vida y el testimonio de Ruben Garcia, nombrándolo como el ganador del premio Maestro de Paz por este año 2012. Pax Christi USA, which is the National Catholic Peace Movement, in recognition of his work, of the testimony that his life presents, has named him the recipient of the award Teacher of Peace for this year. Agradecemos su visita. Somos los miembros de Casa Freehold y estamos con usted y con el trabajo que usted brinda a los más necesitados, that we are in this struggle together. We are with you. Reciba usted, por favor, nuestra calurosa bienvenida. Please accept our very warm.
Thank you very much, Ruben. I appreciate very much. It's a delight
to be here with you.
Muchas gracias. Agradezco. Oh, okay.
I feel very much at home here with you. This is my kind of community. This is my kind of home. This is my kind of place. Les agradezco.
Thank you. You see up here, we have a little sign-in sheet. So we would really appreciate anybody who's here could put your name and phone and address. Yeah, we'll pass it up and down the rows. We are so honored to have Ruben here with us. Also to have all of you here with us, because this is the very first event like this that we're having in our new place. So it's gran honor tener todos ustedes, a tener a Ruben, especialmente y ya a tener cada uno de ustedes aquí. Es primeramente lo especial que tenemos aquí en nuestro nuevo lugar. I hope that everyone will take the time to look at this New World Border Art Show. If this is traveling art show, as you say, Ruben has seen this before. That's because he's traveling. So, you know, it's un show que está viajando por todo ese país por educar a la gente en algo en que está pasando en la frontera. So, this is just to help them open our eyes a little bit into what is happening, and I'm sure Ruben will open our eyes more. So that we are so thrilled to have all of you here. I would like to introduce, where is Miriam? Miriam composed just a little song, very brief song, as a little welcome, and then I'm going to pass to you. Es Miriam Mijangos de Guatemala.
¡Bravo!
Pues a todos, especialmente ¿verdad? Al señor Ruben Garcia, y pues espero que sea de su agrado una pequeña canción, ¿verdad? Que pues, le hicimos ahí. Hoy 9 de septiembre de fiesta estaremos por las bendiciones que vienen del cielo. Los ángeles vuelan para dar ayuda a los emigrantes que están en la lucha. Gracias a mi Padre que está en el cielo, y a Ruben Garcia, que sea bienvenido, que Dios le bendiga por esos esfuerzos y por esa lucha que aún él percibe. Que Dios camina fronteras, no teme a nadie, ayuda a su hermano sin esperar nada. Conoce tu instinto, conoce tu instinto, conoce tu instinto con una mirada. Tenemos un ángel y tenemos dos, a Rita Dentino que está en Casa Freehold, tendiendo su mano a la humanidad. Gracias a mi Padre, porque están aquí. Bendigo el camino por donde ellos pasan, no tienen fronteras para sus hermanos.